totally reasonable. So a little bit about me. I went to Clemson University. Anybody, Clemson people? Clemson fans even? No, awesome, cool. Well, it's a cool university. They're playing Notre Dame this weekend. It's going to be an awesome game, I hope. So I'm really excited about that. I work for Hedgehog, like I said a minute ago. One of my favorite hobbies is to hack on new technology. And by hack on, I mean just play around with. It's just a little term I decided to use. I have 3 crazy daughters, like emphasis on crazy daughters. I like long walks on the beach, getting caught in the rain, but I can't stand pina coladas. So if you wanted to take me on a date, then you can't, don't give me pina colada. All right. I have a background in high performance and high throughput computing. High throughput computing is a bastardization of high performance computing by the high throughput computing crowd. Crowd is not really a term like that, but that's what they like to say. They tried to make it a thing, but they should stop trying to make it a thing. So I work frequently with Node and Ruby on Rails in my spare time, so I'm not just a .NET developer. I like to consider myself a web technologist. So, I don't know. Yeah. So, one time, personal anecdote, I broke a window, and I don't know if it was on purpose. You might be asking yourself, how do you not know that? Right? And the answer is, well, I was a kid, and the ball hit the window the first time, and I was so amazed that the window didn't shatter, that I tried it again, and again, and again, and again, until it broke, right? And eventually, my luck ran out, and the window broke. I told the story to my father, and he looked at me like, what am I raising? Like, what kind of a father am I? This is the kind of thing that's happening right now. But, in retrospect, I look at that and point to that as kind of the signs of my budding scientific mind. So the whole experimentation thing, do it until it breaks, figure out its limits, is something that I guess I kept on trying to do. And one last thing is a confession. It's one time I told a PM that I would allow him to Photoshop text into his images, which I thought, okay, fine. But then it turned out to be a huge disaster. Don't ever do that if you can avoid it. Okay, why am I here? Okay, cool. So I'm here to talk to you because I love the internet. And I love cats. And I love Lightsaber Guy, the Star Wars kid. These 2 little boys dancing crazily. Rick Astley, some Bloodsport GIFs with band stuff photoshopped into the front. It's my fave. I love Lloyd from Dumb and Dumber, and I love robots who try to open doors but ultimately smash incredibly through them. This is basically, in essence, the internet, and it's my favorite. Just bask in that for a second. It's pretty awesome. All right, so I love the internet, and slow internets give me a sad. And here's a bunny with a sad. So that's an example of sads. That's also me when I see slow internet. Correct, I have not answered the question yet of why I'm here. So I want to talk about the media library. And I also want to talk about Git-based workflows. We're not going to spend, unfortunately, notice the title of the presentation has Git in it, but we're not going to have time to cover it. I would be ecstatic if one of you came up to me and asked me about my work on that. Now, in a nutshell, it's just, when you build, it deploys to a remote Git repository instead of to your web root, which saves you a lot of headache when you're in the middle of the build process. So it's also got some potential for deployments as well, but we'll talk about that later. Or not, depending on whether or not you're interested. So the reason why I want to talk about the media library is because Sitecore, its brand, revolves around owning the experience. You, as a Sitecore developer, what you're doing is building experiences for your users, and Sitecore is trying to help you with that. So they have the tagline, own the experience. So they have the whole customer experience platform, the experience database to enable you to make these decisions for your clients, enable you to build websites that close that loop between the person visiting your website and doing something like purchasing an item or submitting a lead. That's directly tied to money, right, to your clients and value. So Sitecore allows for groundbreaking versatility on that front. Like that's their focus. That's what they're going to do with Sitecore. It's the clear direction that they're taking. Sitecore gives you statistical vision into your website. So all the analytics platforms that they allow you, like you can view graphs of basically every visitor that's visited your website, and the kinds of behaviors they've taken and things of that nature. And it's extremely powerful to see those kinds of analytical features. It's incredible. Second to none authorship experiences. Now this can vary a little bit, but I could confidently say that they're leading the CMS scene in terms of those authorship experiences. I mean, it varies on the front-end design of the website, but they do everything they can to provide the authors with that great experience. So yeah, the last point is actionable metrics to help improve business. Essentially, the whole reason why we use Sitecore, the whole reason why you have the customer experience platform is to help your business. It's to help give you return on your investment for the many, many dollars that you've spent to try and get your website to be tailored to your users. So Sitecore does all this without getting in your way. It's unopinionated, which is a fancy word I like to use. I stole it from the Backbone framework because they say they're unopinionated. But it basically means they don't care about how you do things. As long as you're working inside .NET, Sitecore is like, cool, we're going to give you the means to make basically a .NET application, but here's some Sitecore stuff we're going to give you so you can enhance that functionality. It doesn't have an opinion on how you do the .NET stuff. And so in that way, it's a blank canvas, right? To my next point, it's whatever you want to do, whatever your website you want to make, you can make it inside Sitecore. A lot of times clients will come to us and say, can Sitecore do this? And I'm like, well, is it a .NET-based application? Then yes, Sitecore can do it, right? I mean, there's really nothing that it can't accomplish with some ingenuity and architecture. It is a web development platform. So to that end, what I just speak before about the blank canvas thing, it is there for you to develop websites. It's basically all it is. You develop content authorship experiences and websites, and it's designed with Microsoft's patterns and practices to make it easy for you to make websites. Again, similar to how you would if you weren't using Sitecore. Sitecore doesn't care about how you do user experience because it can't care. It is there to enable you to make intelligent user experience decisions. It is there to enable you. If you do it right, you are enabled properly to pivot your website to your users, to personalize your website, reorganize components, bring them the data that they think that they should need, or that you think they need. Right, doesn't do UX. How could it? This might be what you're asking me, or not. So how do you enable UX for a framework that can't do UX for you because the website you're trying to build doesn't exist yet, is by enabling you to build really fast websites. Like, how do you build fast websites? What you need, essentially, is a CMS that will give you lightning fast, neck-breaking speed. So, the point I'm trying to make here is that we are part of a global community. And as a part of that, what might work in the United States might not work somewhere else. What is performant in the United States might not be performant in another part of the world. Localization, globalization, in terms of just raw speed, there's big differences. Like, people don't take into consideration many times, clients don't, the location of their web server or, alternate markets or languages. But the truth is that we are more than where we are currently. That's typically how websites are developed. They develop for, websites developed in the United States, they're English, they often ignore other languages, they often host their assets inside the United States, and that's the end of it. And perspective to other countries as well. They have very clear markets, and that makes sense for their business, but as you grow, you're gonna have to expand, which is what I'm talking about today. So client devices and internet speeds are all across the board. When you build a website, there is no way you can guarantee or control who visits your website, what they visit your website on. They could be using the links browser, for all you know. They could be browsing links on a 20-year-old Linux box. They could be doing it on a tablet, riding on a train from Amsterdam to Paris. They could be doing anything. You could visit your website. It's a global thing. So there's no restrictions on who can visit your your website, but you have to cater to those individuals because they are potential clients. So the rest of Sugcon is ready, out of the box, to handle a global marketplace. The media library also needs to reflect this. It needs to be standard. So this next slide, it doesn't follow the same slide format, is actually taken from a slide deck from a Google developer. His name is Ilya Grigorik. I hope that I'm not butchering his name. About the impact on bounce rates per second that someone has to wait for your website to load. So you can see here, I'll use my laser pointer. Bam. All right, so down here it's like 0.3 or less than 0.3% bounce rate, for a really fast page. This is an error page right here. But you can see on this line, this x-axis, is the seconds it takes for your website to load. You can see basically everyone leaves. Everybody leaves. These are clients. This is money. This is money walking out your door because you can't deliver your website fast enough. You show that to your business and tell them that they're going to lose like a fraction of a percentage of their clients because you can't load their website in time, and they're going to change their minds about how they approach this. So speed is very important. I increased that font size, but apparently it did not save. So this is this tiny, tiny font. This is the types of requests that are typically made on a website, and like average requests per page. And you can see this red part is actually the images. So you see average number of requests that says 39, and the average size of each request is 400 kilobytes. That's a little bit low, I would say, but he's the guy from Google, so he probably knows better than I do. So you can see the graph of how much you're downloading. Your website increases exponentially, as you start to download those images. They're by far the most heavy-duty things on your website. But on the other hand, they are hypothetically the most engaging pieces of your website. So your users don't essentially want to wait for these large assets to download, especially if they're on a mobile device that has slow internet connectivity. Right, so people care about speed, and the speed is slow, essentially. And also, to add on to that, certain countries, this is another slide from Ilya's brilliant slide deck. This slide deck, for the record, it's called Breaking the 1,000 Millisecond Barrier for Page Request and Response to get back to the client. And it is like the canonical slide deck and presentation for speed on the internet, and it is brilliant, and I highly, highly recommend everyone who is remotely interested in this to go and look at the things he's trying to say and follow the practices he's trying to set forth, because it's hands down like the best presentation I've seen on the topic ever. But so, for instance, in Egypt, 70% of the people only have mobile devices. And your client probably has only United States-based servers. So what you're saying is not only, these people trying to visit your website from halfway across the world, they're doing so on slower internet connections. And so what does that say about their experience when they hit your website? It doesn't matter how much content personalization you do, if they're not going to stay there because they're waiting, you're not going to win that client. You're not going to get that business. You're not going to make that money. So, the question I want to present to you is, why are we still hosting our own media? So today, without a CDN, without a content delivery network, for instance, the standard request and response pipeline for a website is you request a page, right? It goes to your mysite.com website. You get a response back. It's an entirely formed HTML document with its own set of assets, JavaScript, CSS, images, all that stuff. And then once the parser from the DOM node hits the image element, it goes and says, oh, hey, I've got this other dependency on /tilde/media/some/file.asxx with a width of 300. And then the browser's like, oh, well, I gotta go get that. So it goes back to the very same server it just came from and sends you another asset response. So you're making multiple round trips to that one server, and that server, again, could be in a random location in the world with respect to you. There's no tailoring of where that content is with respect to who requests it. which is kind of a big issue. So, pros and cons table. The pros are it's easily curatable content, securable and reliable, because the media library has been along for a long, long time, and it's a very reliable way to do things. I mean, it will definitely work well for your clients if their markets do not extend past, the borders of wherever they're hosting their server, and if they're not terribly concerned with load, they're not terribly concerned with, delivering websites quickly, which you should dissuade them from, but sometimes they can be a little picky. And this is a little tongue-in-cheek that keeps the DBA salaries high. That's related to a point that I'm going to make a second here with the cons. And the cons are here. ASHX, I have never pronounced that right the first time ever in my whole life. ASHX handlers can be slow. And I don't, the inner mechanics of it, are a mystery to me as to sometimes why ASHX handlers can take upwards of 6 or 7 seconds to load, but the fact is they do. So the database is also, when you upload your content, when a user uploads his or her content to the database, it stores that data as a blob. And that blob just sits in your database, taking up space. You can't do anything useful with that blob. It's just there. Like with other data, you can index it. You can add it to your Lucene index. You can search on it. And if you were a SQL guy, you could, relate it, on some key if you were really clever. But with images, it's just data, and it's there because it has to be, not there because it makes sense from an application standpoint. And I hope you guys get what I mean there. It's just there because there's no other place for it to be, right? Another place it could be is on the server, or on the file system for the server. But if you start doing that route, you kind of limit yourself from a cloud perspective, especially if you have user uploaded assets. If you store things on the server, you come into issues with syncing your files across a potential web farm environment. So the real option for cloud applications are to upload to the database. However, when you upload it to the database, your database doesn't scale well with blob data. You talk to any DBA, they'll tell you that they hate that part of DBA-ness, dealing with blobs. So, next point. Transformations take up valuable server time. So, when you make a request to an image asset in Sitecore, it has to resolve the item, which it does for every single thing, but it heavily caches it. So the next request, hypothetically speaking, should be really quick, right? But the first request, it only has to render the media item. It also has to do a computation to change it based off of the parameters that you set. It could be width, it could be cropping, it could be height, it could be setting background image, stuff like that. And this is all done, I believe it's done through Magic.net, or alternatively it's done with the system.drawing library. It depends on whether or not they opted to do unmanaged code, and I would highly bet they did. But it takes up time on your server when that time could be better spent sending a document to somebody else. So if someone is waiting, hypothetically, for a document to come back because the server is busy getting an image for another client or for another guy, then that's increased time that someone has to spend waiting. And again, that could affect how long they test their patience, and you don't ever really want to do that. So I mentioned file synchronization. I mentioned how file synchronization can not be cloud friendly. And the biggest con is that, another big con is that the web server exists in one place geographically. Right, content delivery networks. Great point, guys. That's right on. So to answer this, people, very smart people got together and they said, well, let's do something about this, and they did. They're called content delivery networks, CDNs. So I'm sure you all are very familiar with this, but let's review the process for a CDN request. So these diagrams, by the way, were taken from a module, a Sitecore module that's been on the marketplace for a long time. It supports Sitecore 6. It's the Sitecore CDN connector, and I've tried to make my own of this, the diagrams of the same process, but as several people at Hedgehog can tell you, they were just terrible. Like, I am not good at making diagrams. So I saw these and I, man, these are inspired work. So here they are. So if you install the Sitecore CDN connector module inside Sitecore, this is the process flow. You have a page request, page response, comes back, same as before. Nothing's different, except the source in that same image element is no longer your web server. It is a CloudFront web server. CloudFront is an Amazon offering to do caching. So you see this relative path looks extremely familiar, and so does this sign key here. Well, sorry, that's in mine, it's VS, I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, arbitrary URL references your media item. So when the document gets that, it's like, oh, okay, well, I need to go get that image. But it no longer has to go to your web server to get that image. It goes to the content delivery network to get that image. And the content delivery network, you know, it makes that asset request. If the CDN has never had a request for this image, it has to go get it. So it makes that same request to your web server. And then every subsequent request is cached on the CDN. And the value of that is that, you know, if you're in Louisiana, in New Orleans, there's a server nearby that serves you content based off of CloudFront. You know, assumingly they do their job, assumingly they presumably do their job, and that they provide you servers that are near your clients. So if someone from Amsterdam on a train going from Amsterdam to Paris accesses their website, then there's going to be a CDN node there waiting to deliver their asset to them, and it's close, and it will be much faster. So the standards, so I firmly believe that making CDN standard for your Sitecore install are the standards we should set for our clients today. I don't think that we should be uploading assets to our web servers anymore. Like it's pretty clear to me that to produce the best customer experience as possible, which you're already investing thousands of dollars in doing via personalization and, you know, like all these toolkits that, you know, to try to close the loop between the client and the user, the client and the business, and yet we're ignoring the speed aspect. So I think this would only help clients and is the direction that the web is taking or has already taken. But there is no out-of-the-box solution. If there's anyone in the world who can correct me on that, it's you guys. So please do. About Sitecore CDNs in Sitecore. The Sitecore CDN connector module, it looks very promising, but unfortunately, the latest browser support it offered, or not browser support, latest Sitecore support it offers is 6.5. It doesn't support anything past that, which is archaic, right? I mean, not even relevant anymore, really. So what we need is one for Sitecore 8. In my research, I've noticed that a technique that people sometimes use is there's a setting in the web config to set the media prefix URL. Excuse me. And typically, you just put like a dash media in there, but apparently they just swap that whole thing out with an absolute path like http://cloudfront dot whatever. And then they're just like, hey, cool, it works, woo! But to me, that makes a lot of assumptions about, you know, where your assets are going to be loaded on CloudFront, and it's not ideal, right? So there's that. And some people go ahead and they put their entire website in Amazon Web Services and use the Elastic Load Balancer, and they use CloudFront on everything. And that's the direction that you could take, but it's obviously much more involved than just using a CDN. So, CDN, oh, sorry, I thought I had to transition there. So does this solve all of our cons using a CDN? So yes, it solves the con of slow extension handlers, slow HTTP modules. It solves that. It does not solve the problem at all of your database not scaling very well with blob data. Totally ignore that issue. It's not the problem it's trying to solve. I put these next to in yellow, a darker yellow because it's a white background and presentations are important. Transformations take up valuable server time. We almost solved that completely. It might need to be closer to green because the first request, it takes up time, but the rest don't, right? So that one is yellow. So the web server is busy handling media, not other web requests. We, again, in the very same manner that I just talked about, it mostly solved that problem, but not 100%. File sync is no longer an issue. The web server existing in one geographic place is no longer an issue. And not being cloud friendly is no longer an issue. I hate double negatives, but that's the only way you can say that. So what I want to present to you is, why don't we put our assets somewhere that specializes in assets instead of trying to put them inside Sitecore? So here's where my work comes in, the work that I want to present to you today. So it adds Amazon S3 Web Services with a site called Imagix, a service called Imagix. Yes! I love that image because it perfectly describes what I feel when I put this into words. It's got so much emotion. Look at that guy. It's incredible. So you might be asking, whoa, like, what are these things? You've probably heard of S3 before, but Imagix has a chance of being brand new to you. So let's talk about Imagix first. What Imagix is an image manipulation library over HTTP. This is very similar to how Sitecore handles HTTP media requests. So in the same way that you pass like a width query string parameter into your Sitecore media assets, you can pass that very same parameter into Imagix and get the same exact result. The difference is that Imagix, it uses an automatic CDN. You don't have to worry about content delivery networks when you use Imagix, because it does it for you. It has giant server farms. This is how I learned about Imagix, because I read a post on news.y Combinator, Hacker News. Anyone heard of Hacker News? Yeah, love that website. I read a blog post about how they made a giant server farm out of Mac Pros. You know, those black cylinders? They had made their own rack for it and their own cooling system, and it was awesome. It was so intriguing. And so I went in there and I looked at it, I was like, hey, this is a good idea. Anyways, so with Imagix, you have a huge number of available transformations. So some that your content authors or the people who made your images might shoot you for changing, and others that would be okay for you to change. Things like facial detection, noise reduction, sharpness. You know, you can mask an image with another image. You can do anything under the sun, really. Like if you wanted to perform one operation in Photoshop, you could basically perform that same operation inside Imagix. It's pretty impressive, and it's fast. So S3. S3 you've probably dealt with at some point in your lives, and you've probably at least heard of it. S3 is a cloud offering, not a cloud offering, it's a web service offering from Amazon. What it is a cloud-based storage offering. It's structured, provided by keys. And I added that line item because I wanted to let you know that it's not so much like a Sitecore model where, you know, it's a tree-based system. You know, the Sitecore items have GUIDs, and they're also organized like parent-child structure. A lot of people in their Sitecore or their Amazon buckets will still have keys that have slashes in them that resemble a tree. And if you visited inside a web browser, you can see things neatly organized into folders based off of those slashes. However, really how it's stored is just based off of the string value of that directory path, right? So that's just a key, and they're all right next to each other. So the value is that Amazon provides you with an extensive SDK and API to work with S3 assets, as well as all other Amazon Web Services. They are fantastic at that. So it doesn't matter what language you use, what framework you're in the middle of, there is an Amazon library available for you to deal with this stuff. In this case, we're obviously using the .NET API. It's a fully featured API. It's very impressive. You just download it through NuGet and add a couple of Amazon secret keys, and you're good to go. So you can cheaply store large amounts of data inside S3. I do so personally on my side project. I have a lot of user-generated images, and I can tell you personally we have several thousand images, and it costs me like maybe $8 a month. You know, pretty good bit of bandwidth. So it's negligible cost. Well, for my scale, right? But it's not a CDN. So it's important to note that your images or whatever you want to store inside S3 are not going to be distributed globally. So you need something else to do that. And what you can do with that, you can use CloudFront to do that, which is another Amazon offering that work very well together. Or, in our case, we're going to be using Imagix because it also provides us with those transformations. So I can continue now. Thank you so much, guys. All right. So the parts of the process that I would like to show you is that, and it's pretty simple. It's at a more of a proof of concept stage than anything else. It's fully functional, but it definitely has some future work that's pretty compelling, I think, to work with. But the first step is you upload your media blob data to S3 instead of Sitecore using the Amazon S3 API, SDK. So on top of that, we have an extended field renderer. So we don't have full integration with the Sitecore experience editor just yet as part of the future work, but we do have a field renderer that's capable of accepting parameters that you want to expose to your end users. And we also do redirecting of media item requests. So the reason why we're doing that is because if you're using S3 instead of Sitecore to store images, you've broken Sitecore's ability to render those very same images. And so if you reference that path, you need somewhere to go. And so ideally, you would not be doing a redirect, but that's to that asset, but that's the best that's given to you. That's not going to happen in content. It's only going to happen if you have like some CSS referencing content managed images for some reason or another. Okay, so you need to see an example. I'm glad to see you guys are showing so much enthusiasm because that's really exciting. So, show and tell time. This was a little bit messed up a second ago when I tried to set up the presentation, so hopefully everything cooperates here. Here's my cursor. Let's do this. Let's duplicate the screen. Boom. See that? Keyboard shortcut's like a pro.
Rocking it out.
Exactly. Champion. All right.
Give him a hat.
Drops mic.
Boom. All right, projector.
Uh-oh. Pick Mike back up.
Yeah. It's not doing a great job of projecting currently, which is its only job. It's not like a multi-device thing. It's only a projector and it's failing to do its job. So let's cancel that and try again. It got darker, which means it's inactive now, so that's a great sign.
It's getting better.
That's input.
I'm going to try to extend it again because that's how it was before. So okay, so apparently it's not capable of duplicating my screen. So we'll just take that and run with it. All right, so here are just some of the code that I wrote. I wanted to show you the S3 client, how simple it is to use the Amazon SDK. This is almost straight out of the document that says how to upload something to Amazon S3 SDK. So I basically provided my own bucket name, which is how everything is organized in Amazon. I'm just using this simple disposable client, sending it a request with a stream that I'm providing, an image stream. I'm giving it a bucket name, and the key is equal to the key I'm passing it in. And just for your edification, the key that I'm using to uniquely identify all these items is the GUID, which is the identifier that you use to uniquely identify all your items. So I thought that was nice, and so I used that. The downside to using just the GUID is it's not versioned and it's not multilingual. However, a simple extension to this would be to concatenate those values like version number and language you're currently serving. So that's just a minor change we could make to make this multilingual and support versions. So it just calls this put object and then declares success. And I am doing the responsible developer thing right now, which is swallowing everything. So this is a great practice. Everyone should follow it. Right. So next thing, what I want to do, this is a pipeline step. If we look into the custom config that I've got set up here, wow, does not look nice. Okay. So I've got a couple of overrides. So I've got patch instead here for Sitecore pipelines upload.save. It's because Sugcon, while you can replace parts of its processors, it has strong, like it has references to types that I needed, so I needed to override it. I couldn't extend, ideally I would like to just add a processor, but I had to replace it in this case. So I'm telling it I'm going to be responsible for saving things. I get media stream, which happens on HTTP request for a media asset. I'm rewriting the URL, and in this case, when I'm rendering the field, I am calling my own custom get image field value. So, yeah. So here is get image field data. Oh my goodness. I accidentally just zoomed in. I don't want to do that. Zoom out. Visual Studio. That's the opposite direction. There we go. Trackpads. All right. So, actually, you know what? Boom. Multi-touch on Lenovo's is overrated. All right. So, basically, get image field data. You give it a dictionary. Right now, what I'm supporting is width, height, Q, which is quality, and FM, which is format. So these are going to be directly translated into query string parameters to ImageX. And Q and FM, Q is quality, which you can use for glossy file formats, and FM stands for format, so you can dynamically transfer something from PNG to JPEG, for instance, if you want to do things like reduce the quality of the image asset. So they work nicely together, as you can see. So once I build the dictionary, I build a URL builder type. URL builder is a type that is in a NuGet package called ImageX client, which I built, and now ImageX hosts, which is awesome. And basically you pass it a signature key with a secret signing key. I'm passing it parameters where there's a value for that parameter. And then I'm creating a renderer. So a lot of this is disassembled, as you might be able to tell from the names of the parameters and things of that nature. But, you know, long story short, what happens here is it does exactly what an image would do when it's being rendered, but instead you're replacing the source with the value of the ImageX builder when you convert the ID to a string. Really straightforward work, right? Nothing too fancy. This is doing the exact same thing, except it's redirecting instead of actually, instead of setting the source of an image component, it's redirecting the request. And here's a simple field renderer I created. So I made a rendering called S3 field renderer. I'm giving it the field name that I want to render, so it's going to be an item actually in the context item, is that you have an image, like an image field, and then you pass it the field name, and then a series of parameters, and then it spits out the, it gives those parameters to the field renderer, which then spits out the proper URL. So what I wanted to do next was show you guys, this whole resizing thing really messed up my computer. So I wanted to show you the results of this. Now this is a Star Wars image that I downloaded that is huge. It is like 9,000 pixels by like 12,000 pixels, right? And I wanted to give you a large image to show you the power of these transformations. And now I'm not going to be able to geographically locate here, but I can at least show you the transformation values. So, you refresh the page, and it takes time. We're passing 5 seconds now. It hasn't downloaded. And you look at the size, we're looking at over 2 megs. We're passing 14 seconds now. And obviously this is a contrived example. You would not have an asset this large. If you do, you need to fix that problem.
But it's a really cool image.
It is really cool. If you run a website that is for Star Wars nerds, that they're interested in seeing an extremely high-res version of all the spaceships available in the Star Wars universe, then that's the only case where this would not be a problem. The high-res image, Star Wars fan, that intersection, if you had a website dedicated to that, then that's where this comes into play. So I know for a fact this is 12 megs, so we've got some time left. Oh, it's past the 10 meg threshold, and we're already past 50 seconds, and we're about to cross the 1 minute second pipeline. There we go, 12.2 megabytes, and there's no favicon, so throwing that forward. So that's 60 seconds, 60 seconds to deliver that content to a user. Imagine if we were on a mobile network. That would be I mean, you would never download this image with your phone on a web page, but if you had to, you would definitely leave, right? So if we switch over to my Sugcon install that's dedicated to Amazon S3, and you log back in because it timed out, or you crash the app pool and it rebuilds. There's many options or reasons why you have to log back in. You go in here to the presentation, details, and you simply update the parameters that you set for your S3 image field renderer. So what I want to show you first is, without changing the size of the image, what we can do is we can set the quality to something very low, change the format to something that's lossy instead of something that's lossless like a ping. And we said, okay, so boom, boom, and then save, and then refresh. Six seconds, 1.4 megabytes. Not noticeable degradation in quality. It probably would be to the high-res Star Wars spaceships fans. They probably would not accept the lower quality image. However, it's the exact same resolution to your end user. I mean, it looks pretty close, right? Like it's not like super pixelated or anything. It's pretty impressive, I think, the level that you can get when you reduce the quality. And as you might be able to tell, you can update the query string parameters to do things like change the width of that image. Like if I wanted to reduce the quality and change the width to like 500 pixels, for instance, then I can do that. Just have to save it. I have it running in live mode right now, which is why I'm not publishing. And you just refresh, and then you have it as your asset. So every subsequent hit to that is not only cached locally, and it's not something you manage, it's also cached on the CDN. So you're not worried about speed at any point, or transformation speed at any point. So that's it. So let's see if it solves all of our problems. And wouldn't you know it, it does. That's crazy.
Ta-da.
That's nuts. All right, well, thank you for coming today, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time to come see me talk, and I hope you enjoyed it and I can be inspired by the kind of work that we're doing here, because I really think that our clients deserve better than what we can give them, or what we, the standard. One thing I just want to add just to think about the potential of using the customer experience platform with these dynamically generated images. Just from our simple brainstorming sessions, if you can do automatic degradation of those images for clients that are slow loading clients, then it could potentially help improve the performance or help the user engagement drastically. So that's all I wanted to add. Just let your minds ruminate on this very issue and see what they come up with. And that's all. That's all I got. That's everything. Yes, sir.
Two questions.
Yeah.
First, that doesn't add anything from a cache busting perspective.
It doesn't add anything from what perspective?
Does that add anything from a cache busting? I mean,
Cache bus. Oh no. There's no cache validation. Imagix handles everything from that regard. So if you update the image itself, it would have to be re-uploaded to S3, and I'm not sure its mechanics for that. I think that S3 has like a timestamp thing featured to it. Sorry?
That's an only 30-minute stamp for S3.
Sure.
For caching.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that part of it, the whole caching aspect it's handled directly with Imagix. But I would be hard pressed to think that we couldn't control the caching on either S3 or Imagix through a series of API calls. But that's not something we've investigated with this proof of concept.
and second, where can we find all that code?
You can find it there, in that URL that you can't read, but it's on my GitHub repository. It's a public repo. If you want, I don't know. Are we going to be distributing these presentations?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, it'll be available to you one way or another. You can click the link. It's cool.
Just everybody come up here one at a time and click the link.
Yeah, everybody.
Touch it.
Yeah, sir.
Have you done it where when you actually put an image on the page that's coming from coming from Amazon also, or is it just that one little component you had where you specified the image and the quality and all that kind of stuff?
You wouldn't be able to pass in. I mean, obviously the control is tailored to get those query string parameters.
Yeah.
This does hijack all images so far on your website. So, I mean, the way it's written so far is just really just
Yeah.
like, can it be
So,
done?
so from a customer experience, they're not going to see anything different. As they're editing their pages and putting their images on their pages, they're not going to see anything different. Just at runtime, when it's displayed, it's coming from S3.
Oh, sure, yeah, yep.
Okay.
Well, we don't have any data inside Sitecore. Inside the experience editor, in my testing so far, it still looks good. They
Yeah.
can't do things like go in and go to the image editor and change the size.
Okay.
or
So
property.
height and width
Yeah. Like,
isn't working at this point. It's not working.
not natively inside. Not like if you go into the media library and you look at the item and you try to edit it.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. That's future work that I would love to do.
Yeah.
Given the opportunity, but there's no reason why that couldn't work with Amazon.
Yeah.
With
'Cause
images.
that's the hack from the CDN people is that they
Right.
put the height and width into the name. So when it comes back to Sitecore generates the height and width, caches it, sends it over to Akamai or whoever, and
Sure,
that's
yeah.
how. Yeah. So at some point we just got to figure out that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely, like, this is initial stage. This is me,
Yeah.
like, hey, I got an idea for how this could work, and then running with it. And I would love anyone to take this and run with it or give me any ideas as to how it can be improved, because that would just make my day. Also, that Git thing. I need to wrap this up. So, there we go. Any other questions?
Thank you.